excitable audience tonight because we know we're gonna blow the hell out of the ridiculous
crime family
newest lie. Is there a lie where one of the members of the Biden crime family doesn't tell a big lie?
Nope.
I don't know. I think I could document every single day. Yesterday was one of the bigger ones, and a bit of a disappointment because I always considered Abby Lowell to be not just a good lawyer, but an honorable lawyer. Honorable lawyers do not write letters based on false information. The information that is the basis for his letter is demonstrably, uncontrovertibly false. It can be proven by my merely showing you 3 or 4 documents. He knows that. Must have gotten a lot of money, and he goes on the list now. Here's what I wonder. If I demonstrate that what he wrote is demonstrably false, and therefore he went to Daddy's Attorney General and Daddy's Justice Department in order to get special treatment for Wonder Boy, should he be disbarred? And if not, why don't you dismiss the proceedings against me? Because you've investigated me for 3 years, and the Justice Department wrote a letter to the grand jury saying there was no evidence that I committed a crime. The judge in the district dismissed the January 6th case against me. So I don't know, you've got nothing, absolutely nothing, other than my exercising my First Amendment rights, my acting as a lawyer. You're doing it in order to quiet me, silence me. You're not going to do it. And this action on the part of this lawyer, this unscrupulous, unethical action on the part of this lawyer, which also I think is malpractice if you analyze it carefully, is another attempt. I don't think he thinks he's going to intimidate me or Steve Bannon. He's sure as hell not going to intimidate Mac Isaacs, who's got, a lot more integrity and a bigger pair of you-know-what than all of them combined. He's trying to frighten other people. So it becomes difficult to get people to defend either Donald Trump or the people involved with him, or they exact financial punishment because you have to retain lawyers, it's all completely unscrupulous, completely disgusting reasons that honorable lawyers do not engage in. Well, it's the District of Columbia Bar that went out of its way to question my handling of the case in Philadelphia. And they brought a proceeding to disbar me for my conduct of the case in Philadelphia. Well, you wonder, why are they interested in a case in Philadelphia? It wasn't in the District of Columbia. And, in the case, did anybody complain about me? Usually when a lawyer does something egregious enough to be disbarred, the judge in the case has cited him for contempt, Rule 11 sanctions. The judge didn't make any such finding, no such complaint. If not the judge, your adversaries complain about how unethically you behaved, like I'm complaining right now about Abby Lowell. No, this was a letter from a political operative to a politically operative bar association. And they brought a case based on newspaper accounts, and then gave me a hearing, I think. And I think if the hearing is decided fairly, everything will be dismissed because we explained everything. Now I'm wondering, the same bar association would have jurisdiction over what Mr. Lowell just did. So Mr. Lowell wrote a letter in which he said that myself, but in particular, John Mac Isaacs, myself, Bannon, group of others, should be put under criminal investigation. He wrote to the Attorney General of Delaware. He might as well have written to Joe Biden's daughter. This is one of his political allies. I'll show you a picture of them later. No, he's not smelling her hair. Thank goodness. The Justice Department that he's writing to are all people that were appointed by him, and they suck his constantly. It's a completely corrupt Justice Department from top to bottom, and there were two people there in particular that would handle this case that are over-the-top anti-Trumpers and over-the-top pro-Obamas and Bidens. So this is like Daddy Save Me with your crooked Justice Department and the Attorney General in Delaware, based on a totally specious false claim. Here's the claim. John Mac Isaacs had no right to give that hard drive to anyone. That in essence, he stole Hunter Biden's information. Here's our version of it, okay? Here's our version right here. Here it is.
That's Hunter's hard drive.
It was such a big deal when I offered it to the FBI, they didn't want it. If it was stolen property, you think they didn't want it? They had investigated it a year ago. I think a year and a half ago. Things change in a year and a half. All of a sudden, after 2 years, it becomes stolen property. When I first brought it up, it was untrue Russian disinformation. That was lie number one. That lie was supported by 51 intelligence agents who their real profession is prostitution. And they signed that this was Russian disinformation and that it probably wasn't Hunter Biden's hard drive. The Bidens made believe it wasn't his hard drive. And we've been existing under that for 2.5 years. And now all of a sudden, his incompetent lawyer makes an admission and dispels all doubt. This belongs to Hunter Biden. Do you know how many crimes are in here, Mr. Lawyer, that your client and his boss committed? Oh my goodness, it could be 30, it could be 40, maybe 50, at least 3 racketeering cases. There's just a straight out $1.3 million money laundering case where you just need the documents to prove that Joe and Hunter got money from Ukraine, laundered. There's documents showing $4.9 million moving into an account for all of them from the Chinese communists. There's Hunter filing a false statement in order to get a .38 revolver while he was completely addicted to drugs and walking around with it while he was smoking dope. There must be 1,000 pictures of him smoking dope in a home with minor children and an admission that he was a danger to those children. There are several examples of child pornography in here.
What's the first thing you and Bob Costello, your attorney, did?
So now, clearly, no doubt, Hunter's laptop admission, this belongs to Hunter. There's a voicemail in here from Joe Biden to Hunter completely disproving the idea that he had no knowledge of his son's foreign dealings because he refers to them in his own voice. You've heard it. Hunter has now authenticated it. Thank you, Abby. That was very helpful. So that admission that this was his was all for the purpose of trying to say this was stolen property. Mr. Mac Isaacs had no right to give it to the FBI, which is what he originally did. And he had no right to give it to us, to Bob Costello, and then to me, when the FBI, after a year, was clearly covering it up, was covering up the crimes, and was covering up information that would have made the impeachment of President Trump for an improper conversation with the president of Ukraine completely defensible, because it has all the evidence that shows deep involvement in the what probably amounts to about a $20 million bribe to the president of Ukraine, Poroshenko. I know it's different than what people suspected, that he was doing it to get his son out of it. His son was a minor player. The whole purpose here was to get Mr. Mykoski, Mykola Zlochevsky, who was the owner of Burisma, to let him keep his $40 billion company. It was going to be seized by the Ukrainian government because it was built all on property that Mykola gave to himself when he was a minister of the Ukrainian government. And then he laundered it to himself and ran away to Cyprus. The Ukrainian government was going to take it all back. Joe made a deal with the crooked president of the Ukraine, Mr. Poroshenko. He was paid by Zlochevsky. Part of the payment was laundered through Joe, through Hunter. Some of it possibly went to an offshore bank account. And the woman who has that information and was willing to give it was never interviewed by the FBI. I was informed just recently she's still available. And she claims to have the account, the Biden's account or accounts, their offshore bank accounts, where if she's right, a lot of that, half of my income went to Pop, and I had to pay all the expenses of the family, will be found. There's also a piece of evidence that came out in the last couple of weeks that must have confused you, and that is that Joe was paying his father $50,000 rent to live in the house that was filled with classified documents. And another point, Hunter says he bought that house. He's going to purchase it. That's part of, he pays for all the expenses. He bought all the houses. He paid for the tuition of his sister. Who pays for the tuition of their sister when your father and mother are both employed and you're a drug addict? You pay for the tuition of your sister. Or is that part of what Hunter explains on December 25th, 2018, when he writes to his daughter, I pay all the expenses of the family, tuition for my half-sister, right? Buying the house. So why is he paying rent on his own house to Joe? That's the way he gets the money to him. That's the way he gets the half of my income goes to my father. He gets it to him in all kinds of surreptitious ways. And probably some of it in offshore bank accounts. Also, the offshore bank accounts will tell us how much they really got in bribes. We can document anywhere between 8 and 10 million in actual accounts. We know there's more. Best estimate the Ukrainians give me is 15. It goes up to about 15, and one thinks 20 million. We open up the accounts, we'll find out. And maybe we'll get some of the other accounts, like from Russia, where he got, we know, 3.5 million. And we know he got a lot more from Russia. Miranda Devine believes it's 100. We'll find that out. We know that he got 31 million in a 3-year period from the Chinese Communist government. We know he got considerably more money from the Chinese Communist government. Maybe we'll find that out also. All of that is on this hard drive that they now have admitted is Hunter Biden's. So, I mean, it was virtually certain it was, but his lawyer made a very, very stupid mistake. And you very often catch criminals when they make stupid mistakes. The second thing that he did is a lie. This is definitely not the property of Hunter Biden anymore. I don't know if I'll be able to get this up on the screen. We were having trouble with it. But on, let me get this date right now. It would be 2019. It would be April 12th of 2019. Either drug-afflicted or drunken or both, Hunter Biden, walked into John Mac Isaac's store in Delaware. John Mac Isaacs, who you may or may not have seen on television, is a very unusual man, a very good man, and a very expert man on repairing particularly Apple computers. And Hunter brought in 3 devices to be fixed. And to shorten the story to its basics, Hunter brought one in, and it was easy to fix. Mac fixed it right, like, in a second. It was just a small adjustment. Second one he looked at and he told him it's really not worth it. It's too old to fix. You should replace it. And the third one, he said, this one we can fix. It's got a lot of problems, but we can fix it. That's the one that becomes the hard drive. And he says, leave it with me. I'll call you back and give you an estimate in 2 days, give you an order, purchase order. And Hunter signs a document, which I think you saw last night. We'll try to put it up a little later. And the document says that after 90 days from the time that he's notified that the work has been completed, the property is considered abandoned, and Mac and his business are held completely indemnified from any liability arising from it. So that notice is sent out on April 17th, 2019. The notice that the work is done. He has a service that sends out at least one more notice before the period runs out. So if you do the arithmetic, if that's April 17th, we go to May, to June, to July. Let's add a day for good measure and make it the 18th of July. On the 18th of July, according to the contract, the law, Abby Lowell, that you ignored so that you could lie to the United States government, which is a violation of 18 United States Code Section 1001, for which you should be prosecuted unless you avail yourself of the Democrat exception to being prosecuted. In other words, Democrats can commit crimes and not get prosecuted, and Republicans get prosecuted and investigated even when they don't. This is a straight out violation of the false statement statute about something really important. You know what's really important? If they believe you, they're going to put me under another criminal investigation. You know what's going to happen to that one? The same thing that happened to the last one. After a year, I'll get a letter saying there's no evidence. How do I go get my money back for my legal fees? How do I deal with the fact that I'm still suspended for no reason other than persecution? And this will just extend it. And it's not true. The law, I mean, this is not even close. The contract that he signed says 90 days from the time that he's notified that the work is done, the property is deemed abandoned, like he threw it away. You know the law of property. I think we learned this in the first couple of weeks of law school. It goes back to English common law. When property is abandoned, anyone has a right to it, whoever finds it. Someone takes something and puts it in the garbage, it's gone. They have no more claim to it. Anybody comes along can take it. Well, this is clearer than that because the document tells you the terms upon which it becomes abandoned. This is so a merchant doesn't have to become a warehouse for thousands and thousands of items, which would become burdensome and impossible to do business. It doesn't apply just to Hunter Biden. It applies to everyone. It's a form. Here, I don't know if you can see it, and we wrote a little something on the bottom, but this is the document. If we somehow that
hold it up.
It's the bottom paragraph. Higher?
Yep. All right. Your hand's in the way of the sentence. There we go. Yep, right there.
Now, I don't know if they can read that.
So if you read the last, what we have handwritten there, ladies and gentlemen, is the last paragraph, the beginning of it, and it states equipment left with the Mac shop after 90 days of notification of completed service will be treated as abandoned. And here is the notification of completed service is the other document, correct?
Now, the other document, now, The date isn't apparent here. This is the bottom of the contract. The top of the contract is the work that he was going to do, and the date, which is April 12th of 2019. Now, this is one of the notices. The total cost of the repair is $85. The date that he was first notified that it was due was April 17th, 2019. I think you can see that. This was sent to Hunter Biden. Do the arithmetic. 3 months after this, if he doesn't pick it up, it's abandoned. It's in the possession of Mr. John Mac Isaacs, and he takes it, holds it. And when he starts hearing all kinds of statements about the crimes being committed by Hunter and Joe Biden, from me, from John Solomon, from others on others that he contacted, he decides to listen to it. It's his. And what he finds is that it's true, that Biden's lying, particularly lying about not knowing about the foreign business associates of Joe Biden. Now, that's easy. I mean, you can. That's the first thing I noticed about this when I listened to it. And if you have any doubt that Joe knew about it, there are pictures with 18, 19 different foreign clients of Hunter's. There are texts of meetings in his office congratulating him for a good job. There's a text about a document for a $30 million contract sent to Joe for his ideas and approval. And finally, there's Joe himself on a videotape, a video message, talking about having read a New York Times article, which goes into great detail about, let's get this working. I think. Again? All right. All right. There are many, many documents showing this involvement, and Mac Isaacs becomes very upset, goes ahead and goes into the hard drive, the computer actually, and he finds all of these contradictory statements. And he's also concerned because an impeachment is being based on these contradictory statements. In other words, these statements would vindicate President Trump and give an absolutely compelling reason for him to ask for an investigation of Biden, because it shows a crime at the highest levels of two governments. The evidence is right in here. So he calls the FBI, and the FBI comes and gets it. Just to educate his lawyer, Abby Lowell, the FBI had to have satisfied himself that this was lawfully his. He showed the same documents to them. He showed them the document showing it became his upon the abandonment of it, right? And that he had a perfect right to dispose of it. It was his. It belonged to him because Hunter Biden abandoned it. The FBI then did nothing with it. Nothing. They covered it up, and so did Barr. They knew about this all during the time that the president was being impeached. They knew about it all during the time we were giving them evidence of people in Ukraine who could come and be witnesses against Joe Biden. They had knowledge of this when I went to them and gave them a witness who was under threat of death that they did nothing for. They had complete, unassailable, documentary, vocal proof that he was guilty. And they jerked us around like a bunch of idiots. They jerked around the president of the United States. They covered it up. And he had enough of it. And he wrote to a number of people. Yes, a lot of people didn't take him seriously. And my lawyer, Bob Costello, did. He said, called me and said, I think I want to follow up on this. Told him follow up on it. 3 weeks later, we had it. We did our vetting and we tried to get it out. And we were condemned. We were canceled. We were attacked. both our law practices shriveled. The amount of threats that we got, I can't even count them. I can't even count them. But Bob Costello is, unlike Abby Lowell, a very straight lawyer. He doesn't work on propounding lies. This is the letter that he wrote to Mr. Mac Isaacs. And
this letter is from your lawyer, Bob Costello.
On August 27, 2020, a couple months before the election. Still plenty of time for the American people to get this information so they could decide whether they wanted a 30-year lifetime crook as president. Because that's what this computer will show, that Joe Biden, from being a small-time crook, measly little small-time crook in Delaware with half a brain, left back in the third grade, cheated in law school, cheated his way through law school, had to drop out of the race for president in 87, 88, because he was plagiarizing not only Neil Kinnock's speech, but his life.
Weird guy.
No, I don't know. I don't know. This is a product of how corrupt Washington is. So Bob writes to him to solidify things. He says, "My name is Bob Costello. I'm Rudy Giuliani's lawyer. Your email to the Giuliani organization has been referred to me. You state that you had the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop and that you turned that over to the FBI. You also say that you have copies of the material that you turned over to the FBI and that you want to get that material to the right people. This is because the FBI was doing nothing with it." He was now convinced that they were covering it up, and they were. "We are very interested in reviewing what you have," we sure were, "and learning about how it came into your possession. Mr. Giuliani and I have been working on that subject for some time now, and we are in a position to get the information to the right places, provided the information is accurate and was obtained lawfully. If you're interested, and I assume that by virtue of having reached out to us, you are, send me an email with contact information. I'll give you." Well, then it goes through, and we do all that, and we go through it, and we go. It corroborates a lot of information that we have from witnesses, in some cases recorded. In fact, in most cases recorded, like in the form of a deposition. It was remarkably accurate, actually. Filled in a lot of blanks that we had because we've been investigating it for 2.5 years. We already thought we had a case. We didn't realize it was this good. And then he gave it to us, and we started trying to give it to, and nobody would take it. Nobody would take it. They were afraid. They were afraid to take it. And then, when finally the New York Post, after spending almost a week verifying it, when the New York Post decided to print it, they got a call the night before from George Masiris, who said he was a lawyer for Hunter Biden, and he wanted Hunter Biden's laptop back. So this idea of verifying it, it got verified before that, but that's about as good a verification you're ever going to get. The lawyer is calling for the laptop back. So when they started in with this Russian disinformation, it was quite clear to us that this was all part of their criminal conspiracy to cover it up, and that these 51 prostitutes were easily brought into it because they are so greedy for power and for money that they'll sign anything. I mean, they just signed a letter. They never looked at the laptop. They never looked at the background. They never asked questions about it. When they say there were earmarks of Russian disinformation, they don't point out even an earlobe, much less an earmark. And they don't give any examples. It's just the usual Biden bullshit. It's been defunct. It's Russian disinformation. And there was, 50 pieces of evidence that it came from Delaware and that it was Joe Biden's, including a video and audio tape in Joe Biden's voice on it, where you could have done a voice identification, handwriting identification, matching of telephone numbers. So let's face it, they had to cover it up. Otherwise, Biden be dead, Trump would be president. And if Trump were president, all those people in Ukraine would be alive. Did you ever think of that? How about the people in Afghanistan? They'd be alive. our economy would be in considerably better shape. We'd be energy independent.
Let's take an instant poll. If Donald J. Trump were president for this term, would Putin have invaded Ukraine? Let us know below. If Trump were president, would Putin have invaded Ukraine? Let us know.
I'm willing to do remedial education courses for those who believe the opposite, because they obviously have not studied history, logic, critical thinking, a whole bunch of courses they're going to need.
Thanks for joining us. America's Mayor Live on a very busy news night. Of course, we've all been following the news yesterday. You can visit rudygiulianics.com. That's rudygiulianics.com. And Mayor, what does the CS stand for?
Common sense.
And thank you for joining us this evening. The fastest hour on the internet. We have over 1,000 people on Getter. We're approaching 1,000 on Facebook. We have over 2,000 on YouTube. Can't even add them all up. We have Rumble. We have Twitch. We have multiple other platforms. So thank you for joining us. Comment below who you are and where you're from. And be sure to check out the mayor's most recent podcast. He has a good one. It's with one of his former police commissioners, Mr. Howard Safer, and they discuss the proper way to arrest an individual. Of course, that comes after the unfortunate situation in Memphis a few days ago, and of course, more is coming out on that as well.
It just so happens that on Friday night there was on television, may have only been on local television in New York, I'm not sure. I think it was on Fox and Newsmax, actually. Of an arrest made in Times Square, and it could not have been done better. There couldn't have been more of an antithesis to the horrible situation with Mr. Nichols.
The guy breaking the windshield.
Yeah.
And it was the guy breaking the windshield, and he jumped up on the windshield. In fact, I was getting a little annoyed because I thought it was taking too long. And I was saying, you got to go, because my rule about stopping riots is you got to act quickly. You take the first person out. First one who commits a crime goes, even if he just spits or throws something, or because if you do it 2 or 3 times and you're consistent, boy, do you get control of it. Meanwhile, if you let them start with the small crimes, it's like a child pushing the envelope. So they do the small crimes, the cops back off. And then, boy, by the time you try to intervene, it's a full-fledged riot. And my approach has never failed. Never had a riot. Their approach fails all the time. And that's what happened. But I want to show, but I was so proud that my police department still does it the right way.
Let's show let's show the video again. This is the mayor's police force. And this is what they would have done while you were mayor, correct? You would have been proud. What would you have done if you saw these guys?
Could not have done. I'd give them each one of the medal, but couldn't have been done better. And I want you to understand, the people here are high-ranking New York City police officers doing this. Now, normally that wouldn't be the case, but they understood the volatility of the situation, so they didn't put rookies in a difficult situation or young cops in a difficult situation. When you see the gold on the hat and on the shoulder, you're looking at a high-ranking police officer. Police officers have silver. Captains, lieutenants, inspectors have gold on their uniforms. That's what you're going to see here. These are not young guys doing it. Watch this. Hit right here?
Yep.
This guy has 13 arrests, by the way, just the last couple of years. This is like El Creepo. These are the kinds of scum that Bragg lets out on the street. See the cop come out nice and calm, not like the cop in the Nichols case. Nice and calm. Now watch. Here comes a hand. Boom. How fast did that happen? I'm telling you, the handcuffs are on now. Right now. Yeah. The handcuffs are on now. Now, you know the crowd wants to cause trouble.
NYPD legal. Is that a lawyer?
That's a lawyer, and the lawyer is observing this, and he'll make a record of it. You see the braid on there? That guy's an inspector, equivalent to a general in the Army. There's a sergeant right there. You see the stripes of the sergeant.
A lot of these guys look like
There's
senior people.
another inspector, equivalent of a general, another inspector, a captain, regular cop. There's the sergeant again, the young lady cop. Legal. Oh, by the way, I mean, I should just point out to you, you see all the jerking around going on? He's long gone.
Yeah.
It's like a football game. In the middle of that scrum, there ain't nobody. The man has been taken out nice and low as they are distracting them with their listening to their complaints. He's gone. How long did that take? We're going to time it. Less than a minute, I think. Maybe 2. Do you know how long the Floyd case took? 35 minutes on the street. 35 minutes on the street before they got him off the street. You're just inviting a problem. The other one was 13 minutes from the time they grabbed him to the time they got a handcuff on him. Again, inviting a problem. Now, that became much worse because in the let's just deal with the Nichols situation. Whether they handcuffed him or not, there was no reason for the serious beating that they gave him. There's no, and I haven't heard a reason that remotely justifies it. So it is an unusual situation and a terrible one. But that's the way a police department should conduct a volatile, sensitive street situation that could blow up into a riot. You get it off the street as soon as possible. And as soon as possible here meant a minute or 2.
So, and why is it important to crack down right away? As soon as something starts happening, why is it important to enforce the law
we can't
early?
be foolish enough not to realize that Antifa, Black Lives Matter, have operatives in the crowd that want to take advantage of it. So even if the people are acting in good faith and they're getting themselves upset about what they're seeing, there are people there that are professionally trained and paid by George Soros to make the thing ignite. And, you know, the wonderful thing is they tried this weekend to do it, and they didn't succeed. They didn't succeed in Memphis. And I would credit it to the mother and her very, very impassioned plea for peace, which seemed extraordinarily credible. And I'd also credit the quick action of the district attorney, the police, in bringing the case and pulling all the facts together. And I think that had a big difference. Now, even with that, they could have had, you know, sometimes you're just lucky also. You don't get it. But in this case, I think they handled it. I would not take the way they handled the arrest as a textbook case in anything other than what not to do. But from there on, I would take how they handled the rest of it quickly, professionally. I would take that as a textbook case.
But Mayor, of course, the race baiters, the media, they want to make this about race when it really is an issue of police training.
Hard to make it an issue of race when the 5 cops are black.
They sure try.
The guy is black. It sure looks like 5 out of control goons, frankly, who could be white or black. And the unfortunate thing is, what are there, 900,000 police officers in America in uniform? Just regular police officers on the street. We're not counting like railroad police and special police. And they have millions of encounters with people. The number of times something like this happens is, and don't get insulted, statistically insignificant. It happens so rarely. So, I mean, I've had this debate with some black friends of mine, and even very, very, very fairly conservative. They'll say, I do worry about my son being killed by a police officer. And I said, well, let's use statistics like you would use in an insurance situation. What's the probability of being killed by a police officer as against the probability of being killed by a young black? It's just astronomically different. The chance of being killed by a police officer is 1 in about the same as being subject to an accident, something hitting him. Whereas the possibility of being killed by another black in a place like Chicago, Philadelphia, St. Louis, well, could be the single biggest cause of death.
Why does Al Sharpton and individuals like Al Sharpton ignore that fact?
Because they can't make money on it. How are they going to make money on blacks getting killed? That's all they care about. I mean, that's
Black on black crime.
Yeah. How are they going to make money on it? Oh, they don't care about blacks. They don't care about civil rights. He doesn't care about he's not a reverend. I know Al Sharpton from the time he's 13 years old.
Al Sharpton.
I was investigating him when he was 13 years old. I know things about Al Sharpton I can't tell you. But I can tell you this. A complete absolute fraud. He's not a reverend. He never went to what does a reverend do? A reverend goes to a divinity school. He never went to school. Got thrown out of school.
He got thrown out?
He was shaking people down when he was 14, 15.
Whoa.
He was given, but what he became was like a street preacher. He was on the street quoting the Bible, giving these great speeches, and people were giving this little fat kid money. Then he organized against drugs, but one wonders, if he was not doing it to shake the drug dealers down so he wouldn't protest them. One time when I was U.S. attorney and I started a big drug program, this is how I first got. He came to do a protest in my favor because I was going after the drug dealers. And I looked at his background with DEA and the FBI, and he was playing both sides of the fence, and we threw him out. At that time, he looked something like he's about 5'6", 5'7". He must have weighed about 400 pounds. He hardly could move.
And he's from New York, so of course, while you were mayor, U.S. attorney, you knew who this gentleman was.
Oh, well, then this was before the Tawana Brawley case, when he destroyed. The Tawana Brawley was a totally phony case in which he kind of made it up to make money so they could sue the police, they could sue the DA. They ruined the DA's career. It was finally proved to be absolutely false, and the DA won a judgment against him, which Mr. Creep has never paid. And why he gets away with it, I don't know. He went many years without paying taxes, and then when the IRS raided his place, somehow the day before, all his records burned.
At the National Action Network?
National Action Network never had any source of income, never had a church. Never had a church.
How did he pick up that title, Reverend?
He made it up. How did he pick it up? He made it up. He saw how Jesse Jackson was shaking people down, and he used to say he was the poor man's Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson would extort money from big companies. He would extort money from small companies.
And how would they? Give us a scenario. How would that work?
He'd come up to your job with a bunch of black kids, black gang, and he'd say, "You better hire 3 or 4 black people, and if you don't, we'll close your job down." Now, if these people had mafia connections, they throw them out. If they didn't, they figure it's cheaper to deal with him than the mafia.
Because they'd make a big stink about some sort of civil rights issue,
or you're being with a store. He'd go to a drug chain and say, "We're going to stand in front and make a big deal out of you not having enough black employees," and they'd pay him a couple $100 a month, whereas Jackson was getting a lot more money. This is how these people survive.
Sad.
They shake people down.
That's too bad. It's too bad they're dividing us.
And this is
dividing
why
the American people.
This is why the black inner city has never improved. The people who represent them have no interest in improving. All these black congressmen that you see, you say to yourself, take a look. Here's how to figure out which ones are legit and which ones are not. Go figure out how many of them have wives that are worth $1 million or more. The ones who have wives worth $1 million or more probably aren't doing much for the black community. That was kind of the Adam Clayton Powell, Charlie Rangel, some of them that we see now.
But you're not allowed to criticize them, right? I remember somebody a couple years ago tried to criticize the Congressional Black Caucus, and any criticism, you're instantly a racist, right? It's insane.
No, actually, if you don't criticize them, you're a racist because they've done nothing for the black community. I mean, they're the ones who tell you that. They're the ones to tell you that. I mean, the most remarkable thing was when Cummings, who's now dead, gets in front of his group in Baltimore after a riot about 5 years ago and says, in 25 years, no one's done anything for this community. Well, he was the congressman for 23 years. I mean, I think it's too stupid to realize that you look at, hey.
No self-awareness.
Hey, Yo-Yo, what did you do for her? What did you do for her? And his wife became a millionaire.
Thanks for joining us, America's Mayor
So
Live.
what kind of questions
We're getting lots of questions,
we
of
have?
course.
Because
Let us know below. Comment who you are, where you're from. More importantly, ask away. We're getting a lot of questions. Last night, we touched upon the 2024 presidential race. So check out last night's episode. But Mayor, do you have anything to add? Of course, Nikki Haley appears to be getting in. Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence
I told you
close to
the
getting
more
in.
from the former president's point of view, the more the merrier. 3 is better than 2, 4 is better than 3, 5 is better than 4. You know, when you get beyond 7 or 8, it's not going to matter too much. But look at it this way. There is a solid Trump vote. There are people who have voted for Trump twice, right, for president, in 16 and in 20. There may be more of them that voted for him in 20 than we registered. I don't know. But even the ones that we registered was the most a Republican ever got. So 75 million people voted for Trump. Some of those people may have migrated. It happens. But most of them haven't. And so if he runs against DeSantis straight up, then one of them has to get 51% of the vote, or 50 plus 1. If he runs against DeSantis and Nikki, he probably can win with 45% of the vote. If he runs against the two of them plus Pompeo, probably can win with 42% of the vote. Now you're getting to a vote that it's almost impossible that he won't get it. So I would encourage, if I were running this campaign, I'd encourage all the serious candidates to run. The ones who can get 4, 5, 10%, because they will split the anti-Trump vote. They're not going to get the person who's a dedicated Trump voter and has voted for him twice and thinks he was a great president and would like to have him back. Or the person that feels that they may be good and they may be nice, but they've never proved they can do it. And that we don't have the luxury right now to find out how someone's going to react to being president. Because some of the people I mentioned to you, I like very much. Some that I don't, and you may find out during the campaign which ones I like very much and which ones I don't. But the reality is a group of them could make good presidents, But I'd never absolutely guarantee that anyone will be a good president until they're there. I know the job well enough, having worked for Ronald Reagan and having been Donald Trump's lawyer and about as close to him as anyone. So I've seen the White House up close. I ran an office that's considered to be the second toughest job in America, so I can tell you the pressures of that. You don't know until you see the person in action what kind of president they're going to be. You can say, oh, it looks like Ron DeSantis would be a good president. He was a good governor. You could say Pompeo was a good Secretary of State, Nikki Haley, whatever. Doesn't tell you a damn thing. Really doesn't. I shouldn't say it doesn't tell you a damn thing. It tells you a little. But it doesn't tell you the answer you really need at a time in which we have no room for error. I think that's his best argument to Republicans. And I think it's a convincing one. And I think it's one that's going to work, even if it's one-on-one. But I think you can be, the more candidates, the more certain you can be that he'll be the nominee. Then it becomes a question of who is their nominee and how is he going to do? How is he going to deal with it? And I am completely convinced that whatever the Democrats think and whatever Biden thinks, he is not going to be the nominee. I am willing to say that the deterioration in his mental condition will be so significant that a year from now, I don't know if you'll know who he is. Just think of the deterioration during the period of time we've watched him in the White House. We've seen him. He just had one. I played it for you last night. I'll play it again. Actually, I'll get it out. He can't remember the names of anybody. He's got all his cabinet members confused. I think that's why he doesn't have cabinet meetings. And he probably can't read well. So even if you put the names up for him, he gets kind of, how would you say, screwed up. But listen to him. His tone of voice is getting worse. His gait is worse. His walking is worse. And his lack of recollection is horrendous. And he's got a thing with Austin, with the Secretary of Defense. The other day, he called him Secretary of the Military. He couldn't remember that the title was Secretary of Defense. He called him Secretary of the Military. If he doesn't remember his name, if he remembers his name, he can't remember his title. And if he remembers his title, he can't remember his name. And then, of course, twice in the last month, he thought that he gave the Purple Heart to his uncle in the White House, but his uncle was dead for 7 years before Joe was in the White House. Must have been an interesting.
Rudy, your audience wants to ask.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us. And America's Mayor Live, first for our show, we have a live audience. So bear with us. It's our first time trying this. And we have a question from the audience. So give us a few seconds here, and we'll have you introduce yourself with your name and your question once we say go. So give us 2 seconds.
Absolutely.
Are we going to move the camera?
So our first question.
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
How are you?
I'm phenomenal. How are you?
Good.
Great. My name is Val Camoglio, and I have an important question I think a lot of people are asking themselves tonight is, do you think you'll ever consider running for office again?
Yay! Great question. Our first ever live question. I don't know, Mayor. We don't want a political answer either. We usually get political
Okay, I'll give
answers,
you an
right, from
honest answer.
politicians.
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh!
I don't know.
Breaking news tonight.
Breaking news!
I don't know. I don't think anybody ever knows. At this point, if you would have forced me to answer it, I would say no. But I love my country, and whether it's elected office or appointed office, if I felt that I had to do it, I would do it. But right now, my answer to that would be no, but with a footnote that I really don't know. I don't know. It would depend on the circumstances.
Well, that was a America's Mayor Live first. A question from the live audience. Will be, fine-tuning that process moving forward. But that was pretty exciting. And what a great first question.
That was a very good first question, and we have some from our.
Of course, we have our live audience, but we don't want to forget about our virtual audience, which numbers in the thousands. Thank you to each and every one of us that have been with us for the past.
Are they growing?
74 episodes. It is continuing to grow, and we continue to grow in terms of the number of platforms we are on. Thanks for sticking with us. Again, we are powered by your support, right? We are able to do this each and every night because of the mayor's dedication to the truth and the hard work. And for all of you to join us, thank you to our moderators. Of course, you know who you are on YouTube. Thank you to you as well. So, Mayor, as we kind of wind down here this evening, a lot of folks, they're obviously very curious with this Hunter Biden story. A lot of messages of support telling you to keep at it. You're obviously getting close. You must be over the target if they're continuing, if they're ramping up their
That's
aggression.
what Mac Isaac said. He used a military term about we must be right over on top of the target. Well, yeah, I think they got shook up last week with the voicemail. I mean, it's one thing to see the stuff that Hunter has written, right? So maybe they try to dismiss Hunter as crazy or a drug addict or he hated his father, and that's why he said those things about giving his father all that bribe money. But, you can't walk away from this too easily. So I'm going to play it again for you. This is the boss of the crime family, Hunter's dad. An article is printed right around this time in the New York Times, in which it reveals that Hunter was approached by a communist spy and offered business opportunities. The article does not make clear whether the business opportunities were seized upon. The reality is they had been 8 months earlier, and they're written contracts, but the New York Times doesn't know that. So when you hear Joe say you're in the clear, what he means is the Times doesn't have the contracts. At the time that this is being discussed, the Biden family has a $30 million contract with 3 Chinese communist spies, one of whom is described by Hunter as the spy chief of China. However, the New York Times just gets to the point of saying that the head of the company was pursuing different Americans because he wanted to buy up oil properties and gas properties in the United States. 1, to deprive us of it. 2, to get it for China. Sounds like treason, right? And he tried a few people like Admiral Bobby Inman, who threw him out, like an loyal American would do. But he did have a very nice conversation with Hunter. But the New York Times either doesn't know or didn't want to publish that most of the people threw them out, but the big whores of Washington, the Bidens, would take. My goodness, when you hear the amount of money, 30 million, they're not going to turn that down. I think they would turn each other in for 30 million. So let's listen to Joe, because they're very worried about this New York Times article. And for some reason, although Hunter did do a pretty good job of erasing most of the voicemails, we mostly here rely on texts and emails. He forgot this one, maybe on purpose. There's a kind of Freudian thing here, but it nails Pop 100% on maybe the most critical thing, and that is Senator Scummy here constantly saying, I didn't know about my son's foreign dealings. The article he's talking about is all about his son's foreign dealings. Hold it.
Hey, pals, Dad. It's 8:15 on Wednesday night. If you get a chance, give me a call. Nothing urgent. Just want to talk to you. I thought the article, at least the thing online, it's going to be printed tomorrow in the Times. It's good. I need to be clear. And anyway, if you get a chance, give me a call. I love you.
I think you're clear. First thing that demonstrates is he read a long article in the New York Times that's about Hunter's dealings with 3 foreign individuals. He said he never knew about his son's foreign dealings. The 3 happen to be rather dramatic people to deal with. One is the spy chief of China, Patrick Ho, who soon thereafter is arrested by the United States government and prosecuted for bribery. The second is Xi Yanming. Sounds a little like Yi Zhanming. Sounds a little like Xi Zhanming, the dictator of China, but it isn't. But it is a very significant Chinese communist operative at the very top of the party, considered by some to have been the richest man in China, worth 400 billion. Maybe not. And probably the very top of the Communist Party is worth more, but they don't disclose it. But he ran a business called CEFC. And it was a $400 to $500 billion business. It did many things. But one of the things that it did was it was an opportunistic acquirer of oil and gas properties to accomplish 2 things: to give China a nice source of oil and gas. The more you have, the less expensive it becomes. But second, to put other countries at a disadvantage, to try to steal properties from them, basically, as they were trying to do in the U.S. And and this is while the Trump administration is trying to make us energy independent. China is working against that, and so are the Bidens. The Bidens are working and the contract, which you've seen, and we'll put it out again if you want, but it's been on several of my podcasts, including the most recent one a week ago about this. The contract spells out in writing $30 million, $10 million a year to the Biden group. And the Biden group is made up of Hunter, his brother, Jim, his sister-in-law, three executives, including Tony Bobulinski and Tony Gilliers, who are witnesses. And of course, the last entry is 10% to H, meaning Hunter, for the big guy. Internal documents in the hard drive describe at other times Joe Biden as the big guy. So if you want any proof that that's who they're talking about, you can go to the hard drive and you can see people saying, did you get the information to the big guy? The big guy says, the big guy was at a speech in Leipzig and this is what he said. He has several nicknames, the big guy, the Celt, the chairman, the boss, Pop. But the big guy is used 4 or 5 times. Now, in case you have any more doubt about that, Tony Bobulinski testified to that, told the FBI that. And after that, the FBI never talked to him again. Why? Because he can incriminate Joe Biden. That's why they didn't talk to him again.
So, Mayor, of course, this story is in the news.
This is a complete setup. The FBI at the highest level is the Biden state police. They crashed down the doors of innocent Trump people, and they fail to do the slightest bit of investigation of crime that's put in their lap, including child pornography.
So, Mayor, that's all the time we have tonight. But of course, this is a fast-moving story. It's not going away. It's the fastest hour on the internet.
Are you kidding me?
It flies by and it's already over.
I think you cheat.
We always got to wrestle to get him off the air.
I want to know do you think Ted gets tired and he kind of moves he pushes? Let's see what time you are. Wait. Oh,
ladies and gentlemen, there's nowhere else I'd rather be.
We're in soccer time.
Extra time. And how does that work? I do believe we have an individual here who spent a lot of time in Europe. Maybe he can explain to us soccer time, stoppage time.
No,
we don't even know how much time they give you.
We go past 8 o'clock.
Extra 10 minutes.
We go over 8 o'clock because we calculate penalty time. 9 o'clock. We go beyond 9 o'clock and we calculate.
But we don't tell our viewers how long
just
it
like
is.
They don't tell.
Just like the soccer
So I don't get, and maybe you can here. This is worth extending things into penalty time. Come on over and explain this.
Explain.
Identify yourself.
Samuel Osler.
All right, Samuel, explain to me why when they go overtime, which I get, and I get the penalty stuff, why don't they tell you the exact amount of time? Like the game's over and now we have 8 minutes and 22 seconds.
So stoppage time is calculated on the amount of time the ball's been out of play. So it's different from quarter to quarter, half to half. So they don't know. There's not a standard amount of time.
Doesn't somebody somewhere have the amount of time?
Of course, the ref. The ref will add.
So why doesn't he put it up on the board?
Because it's not America. We do it differently.
Is it? So when I'm playing, I honestly don't know when I have to make that last effort.
No, it could be 4 minutes, could be 6, 7, 8 minutes, maybe. You saw the World Cup.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I'm used to football, basketball, or hockey, where you got and then you see the
comes down, and then when someone scores, it's over.
You see the hockey puck. I mean, how about hockey puck goes in the net, and you got to look at the clock.
Yeah,
we don't tell you. Is it not at 0 yet?
We don't tell you exactly how much time you have to go get your next beer or your popcorn. You know,
that's the more important. You must have a lot of disputes though with game-ending kicks where the ref said it was. There must be times in which the ref said it was overtime. You don't get the kick.
That's why FIFA takes the biggest bribes.
Oh man! That'll be our next expose. Thank you very much. That'll be our next expose. That was the best explanation we got. But I'll tell you, that thing drives me nuts. It drives me nuts.
That clip, and I'm sending that to Sam.
All right. So, come back tomorrow night. We'll probably we got to see. Today, Abby Lowell kind of backed off the story a bit and isn't quite admitting that it's Hunter's hard drive. I wonder if he'll back off the story that the property was stolen in light of the uncontrovertible documentary evidence that it was abandoned and it was the property of John Mac Isaacs. I think there's a hell of a lawsuit there for John. And I think the Bar Association should treat Abby Lowell the way they've treated me and the way they've treated Trump people for doing nothing wrong.
Can I ask one question before we sign off, Mayor? When you see in these articles, right, they like to refer to Mr. Lowell as a high-powered, prominent Washington attorney.
High-powered,
do they ask? Who decides to describe these guys this way? Or do you think they ask? Can you throw in, I'm a high-powered lawyer? Can you please say I'm a prominent Washington? Right? Like, why don't they just say a lawyer based in Washington? I don't know. It's something that bothers me.
You're onto something. It's all the cocktail party, the cocktail party, scratching each other's back. They're all important. They all want to make themselves feel important. They're all geniuses. I mean, if he's a high-powered Washington lawyer, then in the group of people that have tried many, many cases, as I have, who are just little country lawyers, he's one major jackass. First of all, he admits that it's his client's hard drive, and it contains. I don't know if you ever went through it. Before you admit it, you better have gone through it. The damn thing proves 20, 30, 40 crimes, and he admits it. Number two, he makes an allegation that it was basically stolen by John Mac Isaacs, and John's got all the proof. He's got the contract. He's got the notice. He did it all right. The FBI took it based on clearing all that. We cleared all that. It clearly was John Mac Isaacs' property from the day it was abandoned. And what does he want to do? Rewrite property? He wants to rewrite property law. I would say he's a high-powered Washington jackass.
And on that note,
God bless America.